Well, hey, you guys, here I am once again doing a movie review all by myself. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Let me check the microphone. There we go. Everything is fine. As I mentioned before, I keep forgetting to port the little intros that I would have normally put on my recorded Flickers of Fear and Tomes of Terror shows. I forgot to port them over to this computer and put them in OBS, so that's why these live streams don't even have an intro, and I'm just kind of like, I'm just too lazy to do it, I guess. I just keep forgetting, and then I get over here and get started, and I'm just kind of like, never mind. It's not really that big of a deal. So I'm just like, not going to worry about it. But yeah, so we're doing another movie review today. This was a movie that I just watched yesterday that I'd actually been wanting to see for a pretty long time. Before we get into it, though, let me mention the sponsor of this little show here, which today is Audible. Most people know what Audible is. It is the largest, one of the largest, if not the largest, repositories of audiobooks and podcasts in the whole entire world. They have pretty much anything that you would want to listen to on there. And if you click the link in the description box right now, you will get a 30-day free trial of Audible, and which means that for 30 days you can read, listen to anything that you want on their site with not using any points. And also you get one credit to use on anything that you want on the site, and you can keep that forever. If you're already an Amazon Prime member, then you actually get 2 credits that you can use on the site, and again, you can keep whatever you buy forever. But like I said, this 30-day free trial, it's a really good deal. They have a bunch of stuff. 30 days is a long time. You can listen to a lot of stuff on there without having to pay a penny, which is like really, really cool. So yeah, if you click the link down in the description box, you will get all that. Full disclosure, I also get a small commission whenever somebody signs up through that link. But if you would do that, it would support the show very much. So I appreciate it. So let's talk about Pontypool. Now, I had forgotten how old this movie is. Well, I guess, like, it's 2008, which doesn't seem that old, but it is. It was a long time ago. So this movie, it's one that I just kept seeing it turn up on different internet lists of like underrated horror movies. And if you're sick of zombie movies, this is kind of like a zombie movie, but not like, it's a really good idea and stuff like that. And so I kind of read a little sentence about it. Like, I didn't really read a lot about it, but just kind of the one sentence synopsis or whatever. And I said, well, that sounds actually pretty interesting. So I had kind of been wanting to see it like low key on the back burner, but for some reason I just never got around to it. But then a couple days ago, I was scrolling through the new editions on Shudder, and I saw that they had added it, and I was like, oh, I gotta do a stream about that, because finally I can pull the trigger on this, because I've wanted to see it for a long time, and there it is. So, as I mentioned, this came out in 2008, and it's actually Canadian. And I'm going to say this movie is a really good example of how you do like a high concept on a really, really low budget. For another stellar example of this, please see the movie Coherence, which I think came out in 2015 or 2016. That was another one that was just shot in the director's house or for almost nothing, and it's great. But it's like cosmic. This one is not quite like that, and it takes place pretty much like all in one location for the most part. But like I said, this is kind of how you do something like this right. I feel like if you don't have a big budget to start with, particularly in horror, then just kind of use that as an impetus to make the story better. Don't try to be too big for your britches, I guess. Like, don't try to like do this big epic kind of shit when you can't afford it, because if you just try to cheap out on it, it's gonna look like crap. So I prefer that if you don't have a high budget, that you just kind of take what you do have, take the limitations that you have, and like make a story that will work within those parameters. And that's definitely what they did with Pontypool. Now, this is actually, I didn't know this when I saw it, but I found out later on. This is actually based on a novel from 1995, which was called Pontypool Changes Everything, and it's by Tony Burgess, not Anthony Burgess. That's a completely different guy, the guy that wrote Clockwork Orange. Tony Burgess. And he actually also adapted his own book, like, for the screenplay of this movie, which I thought was pretty cool. So the movie, it's kind of like an apocalyptic infection style horror. It usually gets called a zombie movie, which I guess it kind of is, but not really. It's kind of zombie adjacent, but it's not like exactly the same thing. And it has like this really interesting angle, like this really really good reason for the infection that you don't really see much, if at all, like in this subgenre. So it's like really unique in that regard. Also has like a really, really small cast and this really kind of, I get like claustrophobic setting that really barely shows what's going on outside the building where all of the action takes place. But it sort of conveys almost all the events of the story through dialogue. So it's kind of like a radio drama. And matter of fact, I think they did do a radio drama version of it, like on the BBC, like either the same year or the year after it came out. So it works in that context as well. And particularly because, and it's almost kind of like meta that they do that, because the whole premise of the movie has to do with sound, words, language, things like that. So I thought it was kind of cool that they sort of, you know, had that kind of thematic resonance going with it, where, you know, they're like, oh, well, we're going to make it like a radio play, kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah, Hugo said saw it a long time ago. Unforeseen said this is one of those movies that was released around the same time as another movie with a very similar concept, Dead Air with Bill Moseley. Ooh, you know what? I have never seen that one. I kind of feel like, I don't know, I wrote a short story a long time ago that wasn't exactly like a word virus, but kind of. And I don't even remember. I know that I wrote that story like before this movie came out, because I know I did, you know what I mean? And I didn't see this movie until yesterday anyway. So I didn't get the idea from there. I don't even remember where I got the idea from. But I wrote a story a long time ago called Lepidoptera that was kind of similar in the sense that it was just like a word that triggered like a physical, like viral reaction kind of thing. So that was kind of what I thought of like when I first saw this movie. But yeah. So this movie has the great, wonderful Stephen McHattie in it, who's in tons of stuff. But I recognized him from Secretary, which, shit, I gotta do a review on that. But it's not a horror movie, but I love that fucking movie. Like with Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader. It was really, really good. He was in A History of Violence, the David Cronenberg movie. He was in a movie called Haunter with Abigail Breslin, which, when the hell did that come out? 2016, I want to say. That was actually pretty good too. I don't know if I did a review of it, but I wrote about it on my blog like a long time ago, because I just kind of came across it randomly. And that's really good. It's kind of like a time loop kind of movie. And he was also in Come to Daddy, which I think we did review not too long ago, that has what's that dude's name? Now I can't think of that actor's name that was in Come to Daddy. I think that came out in 2019. But we did a review of it like last year, something like that. But he was in that too. So yeah, so Stephen McHattie is in this. And he plays this kind of, I want to say shock jock type, like talk radio host, even though he's not that shocking, especially compared to like the stupid shit people say online nowadays. It seemed pretty mild. But yeah, so he's this radio host. Now the implication is, I don't think they even say this outright, but the implication is that he was fired from like his last on-air gig, supposedly for saying some too shocking things, and they're just like, yeah, you get out of here. So he gets a job at this sort of tiny radio station called CLSY, which is in this little rural town of Pontypool in Ontario, Canada, which apparently is a real town. I don't know how big it is. It's funny because the first time that I heard about this movie, I thought it was a Welsh movie because there's also a town in Wales called Pontypool, and I was a lot more familiar with that. So I was like, ooh, a Welsh movie. But then I was like, oh, it's Canada. I guess they have a Pontypool in Canada too. But yeah, so it kind of confused me for a little while, but that's neither here nor there. So at the very beginning of the movie, you have this really good scene, which is like this really eerie foreshadowing, right, of what's to come, I guess. So Grant, which is the name of the guy, Grant Mazzy is his name. He's driving to work in the morning, and it's still dark out, and it's snowing. It's wintertime. I think it's Valentine's Day, actually, because I think they do mention that he brings Valentines and stuff. But yeah, it's Valentine's Day. So it's freezing cold, and he's kind of driving through the snow and the dark and everything. And he stops at a stop sign or a red light or whatever, and he sees this, like, scared-looking woman, like this young woman, who doesn't really look like she's dressed for the weather, I'm gonna say. I don't know if they even bring anything up about that. But she's kind of standing outside his passenger side window, like with her hand on it, like kind of banging on it a little bit. And she's repeating a word. And I'm pretty sure she says blood, like over and over again. And he's just like, wait, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he doesn't know what the deal is. And then she just kind of, vanishes back into the snow. And he has this kind of crisis over whether he should call 911 about it. And that's like one of the things that he talks about, like when he gets to the radio station and like starts talking on air. You know what I mean? Like, when do you call 911? And maybe we need this other number that's like not quite an emergency, but maybe something fucked up is going on. So, maybe it should be like 912 or something, So there's that whole conversation. So when he gets to the station, he kind of says hi to his 2 co-workers. Now, one of them is this younger woman, and I guess she's like the technical assistant. And she's also a military veteran. They bring up that she was in Afghanistan. And her name is Laurel Ann. And then there's this kind of the producer of the show, who's this kind of no-nonsense, slightly older woman, probably in her 30s, I imagine, whose name is Sydney. Now, Laurel Ann seems kind of amused by Grant's kind of crotchety, dickish, on-air personality, like the shenanigans. Like I said, it's not over the top. It's not like fucking... Like, it's not like Howard Stern or like some stupid shit nowadays, but, it's pretty mild as far as that goes. But, he's still kind of being a little bit of a dick. Just a little bit. But she seems to think it's kind of funny. But Sydney, who's the producer, she's getting real exasperated, and she just like wants him to stop stirring the shit and just, why don't you just do your job and like tell our listeners about school closures and traffic updates and shit like that they actually need to know about, right? And he's just like, and he gets kind of cranky about it. But I mean, it is his job, so he very grudgingly says he's going to do it, okay? But he's, like I said, he's grumbling about it. However, not too long into the shift, it seems that something kind of weird might be going on in Pontypool. Now, while they're getting the live weather and traffic report from Ken Loney, their field guy, I guess, who, this is actually funny because he's supposedly flying around in the Sunshine Chopper, which is like the helicopter that this radio station supposedly has, like to do the weather and the traffic and stuff. But then later on, you find out it's like, we don't have a chopper. He's just sitting like on a high hilltop, like in his old Dodge Dart, like looking down over the city, and that's how he does the reports. It's like, it just makes other people feel better to think that there's like a Sunshine Chopper, that there's like a helicopter, we're keeping track of everything. You know what I mean? We're watching you. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty funny. So Ken, in his Dodge Dart, he tells the gang back at CLSY that he's seeing some pretty weird shit starting to go down. He says there's a bunch of townspeople that have come like busting out or like exploding out of the side of a building. Like, I guess they're all like leaning on it, which, I mean, you can't see it because it's all audio. Like, it comes over he's just talking about it. But I'm guessing that they were all like pushing against this wall until it finally like busted out, and then they came out like that. So the building that they have come busting out of is the office of a doctor named Dr. Mendez. And he says now the people have all come busting out, and then they seem to be engaged in some kind of riot, the purpose of which is not super clear. Hey, Tom, what are you doing? Point the camera to look at him. He comes in and comes in the chat room and he's like fucking with my shit. I can't even like be in the room. He's in the other room doing it. Tom's he's gotta be the manager from the other room. I see you in there. I mean, you can come on and be on the show if you want. It's allowed. It's allowed. Somebody was in, yeah, I mentioned that he was in History of Violence. Was it Robert Patrick? In this movie, no. It was Stephen McHattie. They do slightly look alike, though, especially when they got older, so I can see how you would think that, because they do kind of look alike. But yeah, moderator and director. I know, it's fucking funny. Yeah, it's find the audio adaptation and curl up on a winter's night. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I didn't know, like, until after I watched the movie, that this was also presented as a radio drama. It's much shorter than the movie. I think the radio play is only an hour, and the movie is like about an hour and a half, hour and 35 minutes, something like that. So they did cut some stuff out, and I think the ending is different. But I can totally see how this would work like just like an audio drama. It's like really cool. Zach says Tom's like the male version of the momager from Hell. He is kind of. That is like, I looked over and saw his little icon and I'm like, oh man, that's like so funny. Now I'm all like self-conscious. Yeah, he said Pookie's fucking up all the CDs in the cabinet. Yeah, she does that. She must want something. But yeah. So where was I? All right. So Ken in the Dodge Dart, he said, I saw all these people come busting out of the side of this building, and he's like, and it's crazy. It looks crazy. It looks like they're having a riot. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Now, so they don't get any official confirmation of this incident, like from the police or the authorities or anything like that. So Sydney, who's the producer, she's like, well, she tells Grant, well, you better just keep your mouth shut about it until we can figure out what's going on, because we don't want to be irresponsible and report, mistaken information, like if we don't know what's going on, because the cops are clearly not there yet and we don't know what all the details are. We're just taking Ken's word for it, and and he's just talking about it and we don't know what's going on. So, but as time goes on though, like Ken's reports start getting kind of weirder and more horrific. And then at that point, Grant starts to think maybe they're all being punked. Like maybe he's playing a prank on them, or because it's implied that he's relatively new to this station, and he's kind of, I don't know if I want to say he's famous, but they do imply that he's kind of well known, at least in radio circles, talk radio circles. And so he's thinking that maybe I came to this little town and people were like fucking with me. So he's like, maybe you guys all got together and decided to do this prank, you know what I mean? So you're calling in like all this crazy shit, like to make me look stupid or something like that. So he's thinking along those lines. So at some point, the three of them at the radio station, they lose their connection with Ken for a little while. And there are some other witnesses, like neighbors and stuff, that call into the station to like try and help out and like describe what they're seeing. But all of them get cut off or they hang up or something like that before they can give them any verifiable information, right? And then there's this creepy message in French that inserts itself into the radio broadcast from somewhere. Like they don't know how it got in there. And then when Laurel Ann translates it, like using Google or whatever, it seems kind of nonsensical a little bit, but it also specifically warns them not to translate the message from French into English and say it over the radio. So, whoops, too late. Yeah, so that turns out badly. You find out why, like, later on. Yeah, Tom says I'm watching you. Now he's like creeping me out. Every breath you take. That's what he's doing. Yeah, he's just like watching me all the time. Where does this film take place at? In a Canadian. It's in Ontario, like a little Canadian town called Pontypool, which apparently, like I said, is a real place. Isn't some William Dafoe look-alike in this movie? Well, if you think that Stephen McHattie looks like William Dafoe, which I guess he kind of does. Like I said, he kind of looks like Robert Patrick, too, now that I'm thinking about it. All those kind of character actors all look sort of the same. But yeah, he's kind of... Like I said, I've seen Stephen McHattie in a lot of things. I think he is a Canadian actor, now that I'm thinking about it. And that's why he was in some Cronenberg flicks and stuff. But yeah, he does kind of look like... He has that real, like, rugged-looking face that a lot of those kind of character actors have. So I can see how he's easily confused with other actors. And he plays kind of a... I don't know. I like the role that he plays in this. He's kind of, it's not crazy. Like I said, he's kind of like mildly asshole-ish, but not like over the top. But I don't know. He kind of goes on these sort of rants like later on that I kind of enjoyed. But you know what I mean. Yeah. Tom said, looks good. Camera lighting is good. Well, I didn't change the lighting. That's what I mean. Although I almost left that bathroom light on in there because I forgot that it was on. Because I was over there making some iced coffee for the show. And then where the coffee pot is, I forgot to turn the light off. And yeah, okay, so there's this whole thing. So they've translated the French message into English. You know, at the very end it said, please do not translate this into English. And they're just like, oh, and then we said it out loud. Okay. Now, meanwhile, after all that happens, Ken in the Dodge Dart, he is actually able to get in contact with the station again, like over the phone. And he tells them that the townspeople are going crazy and he's hiding out in a grain silo. Like he's hiding in there and he can like see them like through the crack, but they can't see him. So he's obviously shitting his pants in terror, as you probably would be. And he starts describing, he's like, the people are chanting like meaningless words and phrases over and over again. And he's like, some of them have like torn people apart, like fresh bread. And also looks like some of them are like eating each other. So there's like cannibalism. I kind of think that's why some people categorize this as a zombie film. I don't know. Like I said, I guess you could call it a zombie film. I guess the people are technically zombies, but it's not really. They're not undead and they're not shambling. It's not exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's zombie adjacent, but it's not really, you know, it's not like reanimated corpses or anything like that. Now, at this point, so they hear this craziness and the three of them at the radio station, but they're still not getting like any official news about the outbreak, which is, you know, coming over the wire or whatever. So they aren't entirely sure what to believe. There's still a possibility that this is just all like an elaborate prank. You know, why would anybody pull a prank like this? We don't know, but it's like, you know, maybe that's what it is. But they can't find anything about it online anywhere. Now, they do, at some point shortly after this, they do get an official declaration that Pontypool is now under quarantine, but that's pretty much like all the detail that they're given, right? So they're just kind of like, okay, well, I guess maybe something is going on. They just don't know what it is exactly. So then they get a phone call from this like high muckety muck dude, like reporter at the BBC. And he calls the station to get a first-hand report because apparently rumors about this crazy series of events have already traveled all the way across the Atlantic, and they're just like, what the hell is going on over there? We heard in this small town, like, everybody's gone crazy and they're rioting and stuff and eating each other. So Grant is like, doesn't really know what to tell the guy because they don't really have any idea what's going on themselves. All they really have is like Ken's word for it and a couple like weird anomalies that have been going on. But the BBC anchor guy keeps trying to tie the incident in with like separatist terrorists, and he keeps reporting the event in those terms even after Grant specifically tells him, look, that's probably not what's going on here. This seems like much weirder, but you know, the BBC guy keeps saying that that's like what the reason for it is. And then like later on they see kind of like a news broadcast from the BBC where they're kind of saying that they think that that might be the reason for the rioting, right? Even though it's obviously not. So not too long after that, Grant, who is very frustrated and very angry at this point, he attempts to leave the station, pretty much still thinking this entire situation is just a hoax and that like the people are fucking with him, you know what I mean? But this theory gets shot down pretty quickly when a bunch of Pontypool residents kind of gather around outside the radio station and they're like banging to be let in, kind of like zombies. But they keep repeating the people's words like back to them, like over and over again. Like they, you know, it's just shit they say, and then like all the people out there just start repeating it. You know what I mean? Which is a little bit freaky. It's a little bit freaky. So then Laurel Ann, the youngest girl, the technical assistant, she starts to show symptoms of whatever the fuck is taking over the townspeople. Like in her case, she starts talking in these really roundabout, like gibberish phrases, almost like it sounds like somebody like maybe having a stroke. Like she sounds a little bit like that. Like she'll say something that sounds like a sentence, but it doesn't make any sense in context. And then she keeps repeating words like endlessly and, you know, repeating words that sound like those words and then repeating that, you know what I mean? And then she kind of goes in the other room and like kind of stands there with her head cocked over to the side and making this really weird, like high pitched, almost like a singing kind of noise, but it's just like one note. And again, it's like really creepy. So that happens. And then Dr. Mendez, who the guy from the beginning, which this is the first time we've seen him though, but you just heard about him before. Like, it was his office that all those people busted out of. And so Dr. Mendez actually comes climbing in the window of the radio station, and he's like, yeah, I've been running for these people all day. Like, he escaped the riot that was at his office. He got the hell out of there, and he's just been like kind of trying to make his way to the radio station so he can kind of hole up there with them, because he knows they're still there because he's been listening. So he's not entirely sure what's going on either, but he has seen a bunch of these infected people, and his theory is that the people of Pontypool are succumbing to some kind of virus that makes them violent and murderous and cannibalistic, but that this virus is not a regular virus. Like, it's not translated through, like, transmitted through the air or through blood or anything like that, but is transmitted through certain words. Now, he's also figured out that the virus is only present in English, which leads some of the characters later on to try to communicate in other languages like French or Armenian, because the doctor's Armenian, to kind of avoid spreading it further. That's kind of why that message broke through in French that said, don't translate this into English, because the virus is only present in English. If you talk to in a different language, then apparently it can't spread. So there's that. Look at Tom where the super chat's at. He's in the chat, like, passing the hat around. That's what I really appreciate that, Tom. I appreciate you showing up. And oh, and he's talking about his nuts too. Even when he's in the other room, he can't resist, like, talking about his nuts. But yeah. So yeah, basically this is a zombie movie, but the transmission of the virus is through language, like through words, which, like I said, is a pretty odd premise, but it's pretty unique, to be sure. You don't really see this in other zombie movies. And I have to say that having a premise like that, I think it has a lot to play with, like, thematically, because it kind of says a lot about like the power of words, the power of communication, and the way that using the wrong words or spreading misinformation can cause chaos. You know what I mean? It's not super heavy-handed with that message, but it's there, like, you know, like I said, thematically, like, kind of underlying the whole thing. Like at the beginning of the story, for example, Grant is kind of very much in that shock jock mindset. You know, and he even has a small little argument with Sydney about this at the beginning, because she's just like, hey, why don't you just do your job and tell people what the traffic is and where the school closures are and shit like that instead of fucking around. And he's like, well, you know, I have to say outrageous things because I need to foster anger in my listeners, because then my listeners will share their outrage with others and more people will listen, because that's what people want to listen to. They want to be angry. They want to be outraged. And so he's trying to stir the shit, you know what I mean? To get people to listen and get people to pay attention. But as the story goes on, he seems to, like, start to realize the importance of imparting truth and not fear-mongering and, like, trying to outrage people just for the sake of outraging them. And maybe too that sometimes silence is the best course of action. That's why I think the tagline of the movie is like something like "shut up or die" or something like that, which is kind of dumb, but it's like it kind of goes along with the movie, because the movie's actually a lot smarter and, like, more intellectual than that. I kind of feel like the tagline makes it sound like a dumb horror comedy, which it absolutely isn't. Now, Grant eventually kind of comes to the revelation, in fact, that him just kind of carelessly pursuing controversy, like for the sake of controversy or for the sake of getting listeners, may have actually been a significant factor in the spread of this word virus in Pontypool. Like, he's not like patient zero or anything like that, but he's kind of like one that maybe helped it spread further than it would have because of shit that he said on the radio, you know what I mean? So he kind of comes to that realization too. Now, I'm going to say that the movie, it gets a little bit more abstract after Laurel Ann kind of succumbs to the virus and starts acting crazy and banging her head against the wall and shit like that. And Grant comes to the conclusion that the only way that you can break the virus's hold on your mind is by essentially making yourself ununderstand the particular word that infected you. Because I guess it's a different word for everybody. So whatever word it was that caused the virus to take your mind over, you almost have to kind of go back and deliberately not understand that word anymore. And I think they don't go really into this, but the implication I got, or this is how I read it, was that it seemed like some of the people that were infected with the virus, like they knew that instinctively. And that's why they kept desperately trying to repeat words over and over, because, you know, if you repeat a word over and over, like, it loses its meaning. And so they were trying to do that. Like, they were trying to, like, break the virus's hold on them, but it wasn't working. So they did seem to have, and I think Dr. Mendez even compared that to an immune response, you know, just repeating the words over and over, because that's what a lot of them were doing. But it turns out that the real cure, if indeed that is what it is, because they kind of leave it ambiguous as to whether it worked like over the long term or not, the cure is actually not in sort of like losing the meaning of the words by repeating them, but by like redefining them, I guess. Like Grant ends up, because Sydney actually starts showing symptoms of the virus too, and Grant apparently cures her by replacing her trigger word, which is kill, with kiss instead. And like trying, every time she says a word, like he's like, this is this, and he's like a completely different word that doesn't have anything to do with that. So once Grant and Sydney like have figured this out, that this is maybe will work, they're like, well, we have to go back on the air and help people, because maybe this will, I mean, at this point, most of the people in town are dead because they've like killed each other. Because like I said, the virus kind of makes you murderous. And a lot of them like seem to kill their own family members and stuff. They don't show any of this. You just know it because of like through the audio reports and stuff like that. So they kind of go on the radio to see if they can help the remaining people. But it seems like at this point that it's kind of already too late. Like, even if it did work, then it's just too late to save everybody. Like I said, pretty much everybody in Pontypool is dead at this point. At least that was the implication. So I'm going to say, now, the concept of this movie is admittedly a little abstruse. Let's put it that way. I did see, because I was reading some of the reviews on Shudder and elsewhere and stuff like that, this is either one of those movies that you're really, really going to dig it, or some people are just like, I don't get it, or I don't like it, it's too pretentious. I didn't find it pretentious particularly, but keep in mind that it is like a radio drama. It all takes place in one room. There's really only 3 or 4 characters. There's hardly any gore. You don't see anything happen. You're just hearing about it like you were listening to it on the radio or like on a podcast or something. But I mean, in spite of that, it's like, I've thought the concept of a virus, which is spread by words, that's a pretty cool concept. And it's really like a metaphorically rich area for a horror movie to explore. I think like there's a lot you could do with that. Now, I will say that this does have a post-credits scene that's a little baffling. It makes more sense in light of something else that I'll be talking about later on. And like I said, the movie's pretty light on gore, light on violence. At least what's shown on screen. You don't really see much other than Laurel Ann, getting infected with the virus and kind of fucking herself up, like smashing her face into the glass of the sound booth and stuff like that. You don't really see any gore or any violence. It's all hurt. You just hear what's happening, like people are reporting it. But other than that, I mean, I found this like a really tense, very well acted, kind of a philosophical horror, I want to say. And I think it kind of used this kind of real closed in setting that it had, because it's wintertime, you can't go, it's all this snow, and they're just in this tiny, radio station. And, and because there's not that many people in the cast, and it's just this tiny place, and they're all kind of crammed in there, I think it kind of used that to maximum effectiveness, It's, like I said, so it plays out like an old-timey radio drama, like just like War of the Worlds, so the Orson Welles kind of thing, where it's like, I'm on the street and this is happening and this is fucked up and oh my god, it's kind of that kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of a cool, and I think that the director Bruce McDonald, he did deliberately want to make something like that, except like in movie form, you know what I mean? So there are visuals to this, but it mostly plays out as an audio play. So as I mentioned, and somebody mentioned this earlier in the chat, was that this was actually presented in a slightly different version as a BBC radio play. It was about half an hour shorter, and I think the ending was a little bit different. But it was kind of, so I thought that was kind of a cool concept. You don't really see much of that anymore. So in 2019, the same director, who, as I mentioned, was Bruce McDonald, he released this spin-off fantasy movie called Dreamland. And that also had Stephen McHattie in it, playing the alter ego character that he appeared in as in Pontypool in the end credit sequence that I said was kind of baffling. Because, like, there's credits, and then there's this weird sequence with him and Sydney, but they're like, they have different names, and they look like old-timey, like from the 20s or something. And I'm just like, what the hell is that all about? But I guess it ties in with the next movie, which is Dreamland. So his character's name, his alter ego, is named Johnny Deadeyes. Now, I haven't seen Dreamland. It seems a little bit hard to get hold of, from what I could determine. But from the synopsis of it, it seems to be an entirely different story than Pontypool. It doesn't have anything to do with the zombie word virus or anything like that, but there's a vampire in it. And I think Stephen McHattie plays like a dual role. Like, he plays this jazz musician, and then he also plays kind of this hard-boiled hitman who's been hired to kill this jazz musician or cut off his finger. I can't remember. But it's one of those two things. So it doesn't have anything to do with the story. So it's almost kind of like I said, it's more of a spin-off or like in the same universe, I guess, and not a continuation of Pontypool. You know what I mean? Zach says, that's a new word, LOL. What is? Well, let me see. Because I got behind a little bit on the comments. Ben says, I quite like Bill Bailey's zombie film, Portrait of the Zombie as a Young Man. Ooh, I don't think I've ever seen that. And I like the Crazies remake. I like the original Crazies. It's not fantastic. I've heard the remake is actually not bad. And I've been wanting to do a review of that for a while, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, it's a mockumentary about the discrimination faced by a family because their son is a zombie. Oh, that sounds great, actually. It almost kind of sounds like, what was that? I was like that zombie comedy, Fido, the one that had Billy Connolly in it. That was kind of like an old school. It was set in the 50s, like in an alternate 50s, like in a Leave It to Beaver type world. That was great. I might have done a review of that. But I think the best description of Fido that I ever heard was, I think that came out in the 90s or early 2000s, was if George A. Romero had directed Pleasantville. And I was like, yeah, nailed it. But yeah, that was a great fucking movie. Let's see. Danny says 2004's Zombie Honeymoon is pretty good, an original zombie flick. Yeah, it's like, I like zombie movies, don't get me wrong, but there's so many of them. I mean, they're so easy to do. They're easy to do, they're cheap to film, and, you know, it's a pretty... It's a monster that can be used like in a lot of different ways. You can make fast ones, you can make slow ones. It's like these ones are undead, these ones are alive. You know what I mean? So there's a lot you can do with it. So I kind of got sick of them. But like I said, every now and then you come up with a good concept. And this, even though I don't think I would call it a zombie movie, other people have called Pontypool a zombie movie. And okay, fair enough. I see where they're coming from with that. It doesn't seem like a zombie movie to me. But, I mean, if it is a zombie movie, then it's one with like a really original premise, you know. And let's see. Unforeseen said, when it comes to 70s infected rage style horror movies, I much prefer Cronenberg's Rabid over the Crazies. I agree. I do like Romero's Crazies, but I mean, I'm a Cronenberg fan all day, and Rabid is good. Honestly, I just did a review of the remake of Rabid that the Saska sisters did, which was actually, I was expecting it to suck out loud, but it was actually pretty good. They did like something different. Is there nudity in this film? There is not. There is no nudity. There's very, very little gore, very little violence. Like I said, it's almost like an audio drama. So, let's see. Have I seen The Signal? Yes. And it's really, really good. I don't think I've reviewed it, though. So maybe I'll put that on my list and, like, do that pretty soon, because I've been wanting to do that. Oh, Zach says abstruse. I'm a walking thesaurus, bitch. You know what I mean? I was that girl in school, like in the English class, that aced all the vocabulary tests without even having to look anything up. Because I learned to read when I was real young, and I used to just read everything. I was a voracious reader. And so I just knew all kind of words that, like, You know what I mean? Because I love words. I think that's kind of why I was fascinated by the premise of this movie, because it's like it's just such a great premise. Unforeseen said, "Oh yeah, Fido, Billy Connolly as the pet zombie." Yeah, the Saskas are Cronenberg inspired for sure. Yeah, and even in the Rabid remake, they even put a little shout out to Dead Ringers in there, which I appreciated because, man, I love Dead Ringers. I was even thinking the other day, I was like, oh shit, what a great Halloween costume that would be if you had a twin. Like, don't just do the sisters from The Shining like a lot of twins do it, even though technically the sisters in The Shining were not twins because one was older than the other. But I was like, man, I don't think I've ever seen any twins like at a horror convention or anything like that were dressed like the Mantle twins from Dead Ringers. But if I did see that, I would just be like, oh my god, that would be so fucking cool. Like, because I was thinking, man, I could do that for Halloween one year, but it's not the same if it's just one person. You know what I mean? It kind of has to be two people that look kind of the same for it to really work effectively. I did make a shirt a while back that said, what did it say on it? I think it said Mantle Brothers Fertility Clinic, specializing in mutant women, and it had kind of like the two guys with the red stuff on and like weird tools and everything like that. I want to make a better version of it though, because I really like that idea. But nobody steal that. But yeah, I did make one like that. I have one, but one of these days I'll do like a better design, because that one, it looks pretty good, but I can do better. But yeah, so this movie Dreamland that came out in 2019 is kind of like, I don't even want to say it's like a spiritual successor to Pontypool, because it's like I said, it's not the same story. It's like a completely spin-off fantasy. I don't know if it's any good or not. I don't really hear anybody talking about it. I might get around to seeing it one of these days, even though it's technically, I don't think it's a horror movie. I think it's a fantasy, but you know, whatever, close enough. Now, there has been talk since 2009, as far as I am aware, that there is going to be a direct sequel to Pontypool, which is called Pontypool Changes, which is sort of what the book is called. The book is actually called Pontypool Changes Everything. But yes, but I think this movie's been in development like since they first started talking about it in 2019, and there's updates on it periodically. Like I think the last one was maybe in 2019. It's like, yeah, it's coming out next year, but then it never comes out. So I don't know if it's ever going to come out. Because like I said, there is something you could do with this, because at the end of Pontypool, you know, they kind of imply that they didn't really contain the virus, which you wouldn't really be able to if this was a virus in real life. So there is somewhere you could go with that, but I don't know. Yeah, Richard Brown said, what about the twins and sisters? That would be good too. It wouldn't, I just feel like it wouldn't be quite as recognizable, you know what I mean? Because it's not, I mean, obviously the twins from Dead Ringers that's very iconic, like those red, like surgical scrubs that they're wearing. But the one, if you're talking about the Brian De Palma movie, Sisters, with Margot Kidder, then I can't really remember that either of them had like super distinctive outfits that people would immediately recognize. Because really the only one, like there's that one scene where she's stabs the guy after he brings her the birthday cake. So you could kind of put her like with crazy hair and like kind of, I think she had pajamas on, or like a nightgown and like a cake that said their names on it. But I can't think of what the other normal one was wearing. Well, I don't want to give too much away about that movie. That's a great movie if you've never seen it, if you like Brian De Palma. Came out in the 70s. It's weird as shit. I don't remember if we reviewed it or not, but I wrote a big long thing about it a long time ago, like a big long essay about it. Yeah, review of The Signal would be good, says Danny, because I don't understand the ending, even though I saw it once. Yeah, I really want to see it again, because I've only seen it one time. The Signal and Await Further Instructions double bill would be cool and paranoia-inducing. Yeah, because you know what? I haven't seen Await Further Instructions, and I've been wanting to watch that, because I keep seeing it pop up. I think it's, it was either on Shudder. I think it kept popping up on Shudder, and I was just kind of like, man, that sounds good. I need to watch that one of these days, and I just haven't got around to it. But, you know, that actually does sound... You know what? I'm going to write that down, because maybe that'll be the next thing I do. I can do The Signal, and I can do Await Further Instructions. That would probably be good. And then... Because I haven't reviewed either one of those. And I have been wanting to see them. And I've been wanting to do a rewatch on The Signal, because I really like that movie. A Carrie cosplay should be easy as fuck. Yeah, I was thinking... I had... that wig that I had, that red curly wig that I used for my Amy from Fright Night costume, like for Halloween. while I was out and about, I was thinking to myself, looking at myself with that wig on, and I said, you know what this wig would also work for? Carrie's mom. And I was like, and that'd be actually pretty easy. You could be like the Piper Laurie version, like from the Brian De Palma movie. I was like, all you need is kind of like a moo type nightgown, and then just like stick a bunch of knives and forks and shit like that in there, and then go around standing like that, like you're stuck to the wall. I'm like, you know, and maybe put like a picture of Jesus behind her or something like that. But it's just kind of like, because that wig, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, it kind of looks like Amy's hair from Fright Night, but I said it looks more like Carrie's mom. So maybe I'll do that next year. That'd be super easy. That'd be super easy. I always think of like all these really cool Halloween costumes, and then when Halloween comes, I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean? I ended up doing Amy from Fright Night this year because I already had all the shit. I didn't have to buy anything else. And I had worn it 3 years ago, but I didn't go anyplace. You know what I mean? So I figured, well, I was going out this year, so I said, well, I'll wear it. Let me see what else. Astrid says, I got docked a point on a book report in the first grade because I forgot Sapphire had 2 P's in it, and I've been motivated by spite to be a vocabulary snob ever since. See, I feel you on that. And I get, you know what, and this is really embarrassing, and I've heard like other people have this same thing too, and it's especially people that are really, really good, that have like a really big vocabulary, but they got it from reading, like a lot when they were younger. So sometimes you've seen that word, you're familiar with that word, but you've never heard anybody say it out loud. So a lot of times if you try to use it and you pronounce it wrong, and then because you've only ever seen it written, right? It's like, you know what that word means though, because you've seen it like lots of times, but you've never heard anybody say it. So you just pronounce it like in a way. I think I had a word like that, but I can't remember what it is now. Because I remember being really familiar with this word and thinking it was pronounced one way, and then like I think I pronounced it wrong, like, and somebody corrected me, and I'm just kind of like, oh, duh, now I sound like an idiot. And I'm not an idiot. I'm really not. Well, in some ways I'm an idiot, but yeah. Yeah, Danny said a Carrie cosplay with visible dirty pillows. Yeah. I think a lot of people do Carrie, like, because that's pretty easy to do. You just find like a silky pink-ish prom dress and pour blood all over yourself. You know what I mean? Just put a little tiara on. And that's, you know. I've seen a lot of people at horror conventions with that. I was thinking about doing that this year too, but I'm like, nah, I'd have to buy a dress, and that's kind of a pain. Also, another one I want to do is the killer from Alice, Sweet Alice. Because all you need for that is a yellow raincoat, white tights, some little kind of Mary Jane type shoes I think she had on. And that mask that looks like that's clear, but looks like it has makeup on it. And then like a big knife. Bob's your uncle. And it'd be cool because that's Alice, Sweet Alice. It's not an obscure movie, but it's not super well known. So I feel like if you went to a horror convention with that, people would be like, ah, you know what I mean? Oh my God. Because I like to do original shit. I was watching a supercut of like somebody had made like this hour-long thing of the best costumes from like different horror conventions, like big ones. And there were some really cool outfits. One of my favorite ones was somebody dressed as Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he had like the big barrel of the dip, and he was like putting the little animated shoe in there, and it was great. It looked really good, and like the shit in the, you know, the dip in the what the fuck is it? What in the canister was like glowing and shit. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's fucking brilliant. Like, it was a pain in the ass probably to carry that around all day, but it looked so fucking good. But then you had like 40 bajillion people dressed like Pennywise, you know, different versions of Pennywise. It's like you had a bunch of Jasons, you had a bunch of Freddys, you had a bunch of Michael Myers, you had like, and some people like put different spins on it, but I'm just like, still, I don't know. I would just never do that. I would rather wear a costume that 99% of people said, who the fuck are you supposed to be? Than wear something that everybody else has on. You know what I mean? Because if you wear something kind of obscure, and there's that one person at the convention that's like, oh my God, I know exactly what that's from, then you're going to be friends for life. So you see, that's how that works out. One of these days too, I wanted to be the chick from Dagon, like at the end, the fish lady with the tentacles and the green and the gold crown, like with the wheelchair. That would be hard to do though. I need to make some tentacles and need to make that crown because it's not like a regular crown. You'd have to make it. Zach said, can I do the accent? But I probably could. The Carrie's mom? Yeah, I could do that. I could do that easy. Bob, we got us a reader here. It's a curse being the smartest person in the room. I wouldn't know. Well, I'm the smartest person in this room because I'm the only person in here right now. So I guess I could say that, yes, it is a curse. It's very difficult. Yeah, it was called The Dip, wasn't it? Yeah. I remember when we went to see Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When the hell did that come out? 87? 88? Something like that. My family went to see it. Like, we all went to see it together. And my youngest brother, who was... See, it must have come out in 87 or 88, because he was walking, but he was still a baby. Like, he was still in diapers. He was like a toddler. And we all went to see it, and when that happened in the movie, my little brother, whose name is Brian, he jumped out of my mom's lap, like when the judge like put the shoe in the dip. He jumped out of my mom's lap, and his little diapered ass just ran all the way out the theater. He was just like, nope. He just noped right out. I can't blame the kid. I mean, like I said, he was like 2 or something like that. But I still remember that. And like the other day, like I think last month or around September, like when I went to Disney and Epcot, like with all my siblings, I reminded him about that. And he's like, yeah, I remember. I remember that. And I was like, you were not having it. You just jumped right out of my mom's lap and just ran up. It was so funny. Zach said you should be Jessica Rabbit for Halloween. I did think about that. But you know what? When we went to the Halloween party at Barbarella, there was a girl dressed like Jessica Rabbit there. And so that would have been very embarrassing if I'd showed up. Although, this is going to sound kind of mean. I didn't know this girl. And I didn't say it, Tom did. Because this is some shit Tom would say. He looks at the girl, and she's real pretty and everything like that. He's like, she's too flat to be Jessica Rabbit. She's like, she needs to not wear that. Well, it's like, yeah, she was really pretty and everything, but she was thin. And Jessica Rabbit's whole thing is she has, like, enormous bazongas. So Tom was just kind of like, I don't think I would have worn that costume if I was her. He's like, you should have done that. You have, like, bigger boobs. Because you need kind of big boobs to be Jessica Rabbit. You just do. So I feel like if I was her, you can still be flat-chested and be Jessica Rabbit. Just wear fake ones. I mean, I would. Because that's part of the costume. So if you don't have big boobs, you just got to, like, put fake ones on. That's kind of how that works. Dak says, I heard a story like that about Ari Aster when he went to go see Dick Tracy as a kid. I don't remember much about Dick Tracy. I don't remember being scary. But the thing about it was that Roger Rabbit, I mean, that was touted as a family film. But it was, if you watch it now, it's actually pretty dark. And the book that it was based on was real dark. So they lightened it up some, like, for the movie. But that's another movie that I wanted to review. I don't even remember if Tom has seen it. Maybe not. I don't know. I really like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I've seen it lots of times. Yeah, but as Doom threatens to act as executioner Roger Rabbit with a mixture of turpentine, acetone, and benzene. He dubs the dip. Doom showcases the chemical's purpose by killing a tuned shoe. That really, like, and I was, how old was I when that movie came out? I must have been 16. I was a teenager. And that upset me, too. Like, because I was like, no, he was so cute. And they killed him. It was like, shh, and I was just like, oh, that's fucked up. That's fucked up. That's still fucked up. The 80s kids movies were kind of messed up. That's why Generation X people are all lunatics. We're not lunatics. We're troubled and damaged. But I think that's why, because all the kids movies. I mean, look at the shit they made for kids back then. Gremlins, The Witches. Christ, man. No wonder we're all so messed up. Yeah, Ben said, I saw Cool World for the first time a few months ago. I remember liking that, but I haven't seen it. I've seen it one time, and it was a long time ago, and I hardly remember anything about it. Because that was like a little mini trend of live action mixed with animation. You know what I mean? Astrid says, on the topic of siblings and costumes, I'm still in the process of peer pressuring my younger brother into having a kid so I can borrow it for Halloween and dress it up as a little tub of the stuff. That would be fucking epic. Oh my god, that would be so awesome. Actually, that would be kind of a good costume too if you could somehow do that part at the end, which was like stop motion, where all the stuff like comes out of the dude's mouth and like his mouth is all big like that. That would be good too. But you'd have to really know what you were doing, like, to do that. Yeah, Isabella said, yeah, it's excellent. It still looks great. The effects are excellently crafted. I'm guessing you're talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, it still holds up, I think. And yeah, yeah, Jessica Rabbit. Let me see. Baby sick is like the stuff. Yeah, it is. I don't have any kids myself, but I had 3 younger siblings, many cousins, and my parents ran a daycare, so I was around little kids all the time, which is one of the reasons that I never wanted any. Even though all of my siblings are delightful, and were when they were children also. They were all really good. They weren't really a pain, but other people's kids were a huge pain in the ass, and I was just like, yeah, no, not for me. Not for me. All right, so how long? Holy crap, I've been going on for an hour. At least Tom's not. Is Tom watching me still? Are you watching me still, Tom? From the other room. He's just like he's in the bedroom, but I'm in the office. I just thought that was so funny that he popped in and he was like watching me making comments and stuff. But yeah, so I think I was pretty much done talking about the movie. But yeah, it's on. If you have Shudder, which you should absolutely get. I'm not sponsored by Shudder, but I've had Shudder for years and years, and I really like it. Some people piss and moan, and they're just like, just get the free trial over Halloween. Just watch what you want to watch, and then don't watch anymore. But they add new shit all the time, and I like that they have a wide variety of things. They have a lot of old movies. They really keep up with new movies. They have a lot of foreign movies. They have a lot of series, which I don't know if a lot of people know. They had the new Creep Show. They had what's the Drag Brothers. It's kind of like, that's a really cool show. And they also have Joe Bob's Drive-In. Like, those are always fun. But yeah, so Pontypool just got added to Shudder. It's probably available elsewhere as well, but that was what reminded me to do it, because it just popped up and I was like, oh shit, I've been wanting to see that. So I decided to do it. But yeah, so yeah, check it out if you like zombie movies and want to see something that's kind of a fresh take on it. That's, like I said, maybe a little bit more of a philosophical or an intellectual edge, if you want to call it that, because it's kind of more like a radio drama. It's not like not super action packed in the sense that you're just getting all the information like through dialogue. So, but I mean, if that sounds like something you would like, then a lot of people really do seem to like this movie, and you probably will like it too. But yeah, so I guess I'm going to wrap it up for the afternoon. Remember to come by tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our regular show with me and Tom, obviously. And we're going to be talking about man-eating animals. Like I said, we got the idea from that William Shatner show, The Unexplained, that's on Discovery, TLC, I don't remember what it's on. I watched it on Hulu, so I don't know what channel it started on. But we watched like the season 4 of that, like all 26 episodes of it, just like in over 3 nights or whatever. And they did a episode about some man-eating animals, and I was like, oh man, that's a good idea for a show. So I put it in the poll and it won. So I was like, oh goody. So we're going to talk about the Ghost in the Darkness, like those man-eating lions. We're going to talk about that shark in New Jersey that inspired Jaws. That Gustav, that big fucking crocodile, who might be still alive, who's eaten like hundreds of people, which is fucked up. That's got to be one of the worst. I don't want to be eaten by either a shark or a crocodile. I don't want to be eaten by any animal, really. But I think that would be the worst. Would be a shark or a crocodile. That would be so fucked up. It's just that kind of shit gives me nightmares. So I'll probably have nightmares after the show, I'm going to say. But it should be fun anyway. But yeah, Tom's still here. He's been watching me the whole time. Now after I shut off, he's probably going to like critique. I wonder if I'm going to go in the room and he's going to critique my performance or something like that. Oh well, I guess I better get on with it. Yeah, but hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow night talking about man-eating animals, and that'll do it for this movie review. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye.